Check the sound through your phone again, like normal.
Yep. Alright, prepare. Sound is on.
Alright, and we're going to have a countdown. Look at us.
Only 2 minutes late.
That's good stuff.
We're still in the 3 weeks where you can't talk to them yet. Because he went to boarding school, so in the first 3 weeks you can't talk to him. Even though he faced time in Virginia, Hartway Military Academy. But they post photos. And so,
Let me try again.
Photos, So I recognize his sneakers at the football game.
Well, that should pick up,
It's
right?
nice because
Yeah, there's 25 minutes
they had
behind,
their
so.
first football game, they had their first soccer game.
And how old is he?
He's 12.
And he's in boarding school. Wow. Does he like it?
It's
We'll
low.
find out.
That's
This
low.
first year?
There it goes. Okay, now it's picking up.
We eased him into
1100, 1200.
Valley Forge on the adventure camp for a month. And he was coming and going all summer.
So,
He got
hold on.
used to leaving.
We have sound.
And,
We have sound? Alright.
we've seen photos of
We have sound. We're good there, we're good there, we're good there. Okay. Let me get back to my switcher.
Interesting.
And
My son,
to the switcher. Okay.
he went to
And you are on.
And we are on. Well, welcome back to Thursday night edition of Udicci.TV. It's pretty much the only night that we do anything. So, hey, welcome back to Udicci.TV. Tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about change. And for many, many reasons, there's a lot of change that's going on around us. Some of this that you can't see, some of it that you are going to see. But tonight I really want to approach change from a little bit more almost philosophical standpoint, if you will. And I want to kind of begin with a quote, as we often do, from George Bernard Shaw. It says, "Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything." And I want to tell you that I'm coming tonight, and I'm actually just a bit sad. Rochester experienced a tragic loss last night. One of our police officers was shot in the line of duty. And I'm really very sad to see all of the online comments that are going on, and I'm sad to see, you know, I get it. Everybody has a perspective and everybody has an experience in life, and by no means do I want to devalue any of those experiences, but I'm saddened by some of the comments that people are making for what it means for their own lives, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But here's a reality, right? Everybody knows our world is changing, and there's no denying that. Here's the difference. Maybe not the difference, but I believe the change is for the better. I truly do believe the change is for the better. And I know that maybe looking around right now, seeing all the horrendous things that are going on over in the Middle East, and seeing Ebola coming out of Africa, and seeing the economy crashing, and seeing wars and rumors of wars all over the place, I know it's hard to believe that this is a change for the better, but I believe it is. And maybe I'm just naive and I simply want to believe that this change is good. But I think that's kind of the point. I think that we have the ability to influence the direction the change goes. If we throw our hands up in the air and say, "I give up, I quit," then those that have caused all these problems are going to take over, and it's not going to be better. I mean, to think that we can just sit back and allow these changes to happen and do absolutely nothing about it is to pretend that you won't be affected. And I think that that's very much the sad thing. And like I say, I do truly, honestly, I do believe that the changes that are coming are for the better. But here's the thing. I don't think they're going to be easy. I think they're going to be very difficult. I think we're going to have to struggle. I think it's going to be hard. And maybe for some of you that watch this, because we're in Rochester, New York, we're in the 3rd poorest city in America, and I have to tell you, day in and day out, we live the reality of that poverty. And it might be one thing that, you know, it's like, what do you mean by that? You live in the suburbs and everything's good, you're running a business. Yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing. Finding customers, still difficult. Helping people who are trying to do things that are good, but simply don't have the funding to get it done. And we try every way we can. We scrape and we pull together as an organization, as a team, and as a community. And we try to do something good. No matter how simple it is, whether it is just going out and picking up trash in the neighborhood, we're trying to be that positive change. And honestly, I understand the discouragement that comes with the poverty and the thinking that goes on in our world. And it's so easy. It's so easy to just give up and say, you know what? We've tried for so long, there's nothing we can do. But I want everybody to believe this. That is a lie. There is something we can do, and we have to do it. Each and every one of us has the power to change. Why? Because we can change our minds. And that is one of the most powerful changes that you're ever going to make, is to change your mind. You need to stop some of the thinking that is causing division and stopping your heart from bleeding with compassion for those who you should care for. Yes, I am saying you should care. We have people around us dying, crying, going hungry, and we can help. And we simply need to start by changing our mind. And I know most of us don't want to change our mind, and I'll get to the woman here when Tess comes up that I really kind of got to me earlier, but you know, here's my thing. Are you willing to change what you think if it would benefit you? If we could show you how it could benefit you to change the way you're thinking, that your life would be better, would you be willing to change the way that you think? Honestly, think of something right now in your life that you would like to change. Maybe your financial condition. Maybe you want a nicer home. Maybe you'd like to not struggle paycheck to paycheck. Maybe you want a new car. Maybe it's a vacation. Whatever it is, whatever change you'd like to see in your life, if you could achieve that change by simply changing the way that you think and beginning to act upon those new thoughts, because you will act according to what you believe, that's just reality. If you could change your life by the way you think, would you? Honestly, think about that. Are you willing to change the way you think if it could benefit yourself? Now here's how I want to challenge you. Would you be willing to change the way you think if it could benefit somebody else? If you answered yes to the first one and you answered no to the second one, I think you need to check your heart. I think you really need to check who you are at your very core. Because if you're willing to change for yourself, but you're not willing to change for another, I think that really speaks to who you might be. And here's what I know. I am so far from perfect, I have no idea what I'm doing half the time. I wake up each morning scared to take the first step out of bed. But I know I have to. Because if somebody doesn't do it, nobody will. And that's all we want to do, is to influence change in our world. Because change is going to happen. And if we don't guide the change, it's going to end up as something we don't want to see. So again, before I bring Tess up, let's just think about what George Bernard Shaw said. Progress is impossible without change. And those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. So let that sink while we bring up the real reason everybody tunes in. Tess Padmore, get on up here. No power nap today.
No power nap today.
All right.
It wasn't easy.
and I, what's that? What's that?
Turn.
Oh, and yeah,
Just turn.
what? So yeah, I guess I should probably go ahead and apologize right here on live to the World TV, because normally I give you ample, I'm talking mega amounts of time, like a day, to prepare for our conversations, and today I didn't do that.
Well, can I tell you a secret?
What?
It doesn't matter because I just come.
I
don't need time.
I appreciate that. When I got your message today, I was like,
no, I just all I need is one word. What is the topic? That's all I need. So don't worry about that.
So, and I want to get to a place, and I want to tell you that I really was saddened today by a post, and I really, something you said out last week also kind of really sat with me, and we were talking about like our age differences here, and you know, you pointed out that, you know, I act much older than my age and how I'm decrepit. No, you pointed, you said, you know what, you know, basically in some ways you said, you know what, you're tired. You're tired of having the conversations. You're tired of trying to get something done that that won't amount to change.
Well, I should probably preface that what I'm about to say with one of the reasons that, which is kind of a tangent, but one of the reasons that I power napped last week was because I was really tired. And one of the reasons I was really tired was because I have chronic illnesses, and I'd spent the day before in the emergency room, and so I was really tired.
Like literally tired.
Literally tired, but also when you have chronic illnesses and you have an episode and you go into the emergency room, it takes about a week before you psychologically pull yourself together. So that was part of what I was feeling last week, and so I mean I feel better this week, so I'm up on it. And so one of the things I wanted to say about some of the opening comments and talking about change is that I think before we get into the discussion of people changing their minds, we just need to talk about change in general.
Okay.
Because in order for someone to change their mind on an issue, we have to talk about how that particular person might deal with change in general. And really what change is about is a fear of the unknown. That's why people tend to resist change, because they're afraid of the unknown. I have, partly because of the person who raised me, my mother, but partly just because of who I am one of those people that want to know what's on the other side of the mountain. So I'm not afraid of the unknown. My curiosity is stronger than my fear of change.
Okay.
And so I think before we have such a broad discussion about how do we make change in the environment, we have to talk about what change means to the individual and why are people afraid of the unknown.
So to your point, and I think that that's a great point, and what I'm hearing you say right now is that there are going to be some people who are afraid to change simply because of the unknown or the result.
Right, and it has nothing to do with the social issue.
Right.
They're just afraid of change. And so that I think that the people who maybe get on the front line and that sort of thing, those may be the people who are not afraid of the unknown. But there's always going to be people who are afraid of the unknown.
You know, I think that that's fair. And I think that it's interesting because this week I've been having a different discussion, and in my head I'm likening it to in war, right? I'm military, the background, so a lot of times I kind of oversimplify. I guess like everybody, you pull back to your understandings.
Right.
And I got to thinking, I'm like, you know, when it's time for a war, there are some people that are sent, and they're on the front lines, to your point, the front lines. And then there are those who are left behind. And left behind is not a good word, but are stay behind, and maybe they don't need to change as much as they need to learn how to support. They need to learn how to find that strength inside of them to help the change that's in front of them.
Well, I think in terms of the military, in my lifetime, what I've gone through, my first war was Vietnam War. Okay. So I think that's always sort of this example of, well, no one appreciated the veterans and that sort of thing, and I think that I think sometimes we forget the fact that you don't support the war doesn't mean you don't support the vets.
Yeah, and I really don't want to, and I get how it goes, and more than that, I just wanted to think more in structure and organization, trying to keep it on the individual. Do you think that there are people who and you're right, they're maybe afraid to change, but maybe they could learn how to appreciate the outcome and therefore support those that are out in the front line? Would that be a way that those people themselves could change or support change?
We talked about that before, because I mentioned that I had a manager that I worked for, a man I worked for 9 years, almost 10, well, really about 10 or 11 years. And I learned a lot about managing people.
Okay.
And that had to do with, and this deals with change, how do you bring a group of people together who may not get along, may not like each other, but they have something in common, and they understand that what they are trying to accomplish is the right thing to do.
Yes.
And therefore, we can disagree, but we know that this particular thing that we've decided to do is the right thing to do.
And how do we get there?
And how do we get there?
I've always heard that you just kind of picture everybody in their underwear, so maybe we're supposed to all get... Oh, I'm sorry, that's public speaking.
You're the one that's supposed to make the faces and have the reaction shots. So you're the one that's supposed to do that. I go back and watch the show, and I love your little like, what did she say?
What does that mean? But that's, so if we can all get a hold of the vision, the result of the change, and we can buy into the result, even if maybe we don't know how we're going to get there, then we can put aside some of those differences.
You can put aside, I mean, I guess I'll say it this way. I have seen it happen, but I also realize that it could not have happened if you, in our case, if we didn't have that particular person who had the gift of, number one, recognizing that what I really need to do is I've identified what these folks have in common. This is where we want to go. So now I just have to, show them, lead them into understanding it's the right thing to do.
And here, and I don't want to go too far into leading, because one of the next up here is I'm going to be talking about like how can we influence change, and that gets into there. But I do want to leave it here that with this point, leadership is not easy. Leadership is probably if you will, one of the more scary, lonely things that you're ever going to do. It's very hard, and it's arduous.
Well, and even that person that took us forward fell in the category either you loved them or you hated them.
Right, and you're just maybe thankful they fell in before you.
But we moved forward.
But we moved forward on that. So I think that that's an interesting perspective. I think that for all of us, it kind of starts to speak to, all right, let's do a heart check here. You might be a little bit afraid, but are you willing to find areas that we can agree? Or are you willing to listen to how we could at least do something better? Are you willing to then listen to how we can do it together? Like it's almost like a little process we may have to take people through, but they have to open up their hearts and say, okay, maybe, and this gets into the changing your mind, maybe I need to be willing to think a little bit differently. Maybe I need to see things a little bit differently, or at least for a moment set aside my personal beliefs in hopes that things could be something a little bit different.
Well, and I think the key is there something, and that's, to me, that's really the key. Is there something that we both care about? That's really the key. If we both want this, then we have room for dialogue.
Yes.
Because we both want this. We have to agree on how we're going to get there. We may still hate each other, but we know that we love this.
And hopefully by the time you got there, you'd realize we don't hate each other. We don't have a lot in common, but they're good people.
No, because you'll bond.
Right, you bond over getting that
bond over that particular thing.
Which it is a nice mic. When I look at it, it's like the microphone as a whole. It's interesting. If you get really close, it doesn't. Anyway.
But I think that's part of. I think that's part of what we're missing right now. We haven't found that thing that binds us together, that we both love.
So what spurred kind of my sadness this morning, last night when this whole thing went down with the Rochester, it's warm in here today, by the way. Are you feeling it?
No.
He's
going through the male menopause.
Medication.
Either way.
Yeah, it could be. You're right. Anyways.
You're making me hot doing that. Stop that.
So anyways, for Rochester last night, we had a really tragic event. It was we had a police officer killed, and
we had three people shot.
I was just going to go there. It was more than the 3 people who were killed. There was an innocent bystander who went to the hospital, and I understand is okay. Is it going to be okay? I don't know.
There was a police officer who died. Right. Then there was a perpetrator who I don't know whether he died or not.
No.
I stopped in the middle of the surgery. I said, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then there was the innocent bystander. So my understanding as of last night at 3 o'clock in the morning is that there were 3 people shot.
Right. That was.
And one fatally who happened to be the police officer.
And it truly bothered me today to come online and the first thing was, this is race, the media is lying, and I'm going, okay, I understand the conversations we're having, but what about the families of those affected by this? Where is at first our compassion? Where is at first for the innocent bystander? How scary must that be now to say, I live in this neighborhood, and now proof absolutely very, very simplistic. There was news last night that, in Gates here, there's some break-ins going on. And it's scary to think, what do you mean, I'm not safe in my neighborhood anymore? Well, now all of a sudden some innocent bystander who maybe never felt completely safe in the neighborhood, because I understand it wasn't a great part of the city that this happened in.
Well, but not only that, we have shootings every day.
Right, so I get, but now it's real to that family.
Right.
You've got, that person, I don't know age, I don't know anything else, but that person in the hospital, I'm sure they're concerned. I'm sure they're worried. Where's that compassion? And if you don't trust the police officers, so what? It's a human being. And what really what it came down to is, and thank you, Christopher Williams. Do you know Chris? Gamers Nostalgia? Gamers, okay. Just a good guy. He had some great points that he was making online. But what it came down to is that we just aren't valuing life.
Well, and one of the things I was going to say, because you were so upset about what you read online, I joined Facebook less than a month ago. Mm-hmm. And after just this 3.5 weeks, I don't know if you've seen the commercial with the little old ladies, where one saying, I'm posting photos on my wall, and her friends keep saying, but that's not how it's done. And she said, I unfriend you all. And so I've been on Facebook now for just shy of a month, and I have unfriended a lot of people, not because they really did anything wrong, but how can I best, I'm trying to find the right way of saying this, because I was reading so much stuff. I was reading so much stuff that either was relevant or I'm not sure what its purpose is. I know there's a generational gap. I don't get the whole selfie thing where you just constantly post pictures of yourself. And I mean, there's so much to it. And so regardless of the situation, because we have a serious situation here, I've had to either unfriend because I don't want to read it, or realize that I can't read it all. And I can't react to it. Because number one, people will say things online that they won't say anywhere else. People will say things online if for no other reason than to bait you. Yeah. It may not even be the way they feel. Yes. They may not even feel that way.
Hey, I do that. But I'm a marketer. That's my job.
So I say that to say that I try not to react to. I'm moving to the point of moving away from reading it. Mm-hmm. And so I've joined innocent groups. Okay, where like the nostalgia group of the Lower East Side. Where you look at old photos, and you're like, and we talk about what we used to do and how the neighborhood has changed.
On Twitter, that's what I'm looking at Twitter. There, I found like these old pictures.
Exactly,
But
or I've found a group that I think I can market my product to, that sort of thing. But this general running commentary. And I can tell that people are doing it, that you are literally spending your entire day commenting on things that you don't care about, you want to get a rise out of someone, you're baiting people, you're unhappy, I read sad stories about people, I got mugged last night, why do I live here? And my response is, you move.
You move.
And yes, you can.
Well, so let me tell you though, like, let me get to the
So I know where you're headed.
Yeah, well, the one that really made me sad though was it because to me, this so expressed the heart of I've given up. And it was kind of like when you were saying last week you were tired, and I know now that a little bit different, but it was, and again, you don't really know by pictures, and I don't know this person, but I think it was a black lady, but the picture was a man and woman, but the name seemed to be...
It doesn't matter. It could be...
No, it does. This was her comment. Getting black people to stop committing crime isn't going to happen. It's like you guys want the black race to be inhumane. The black life isn't valued at all, and there's nothing we can do about that. While I want my people to do better, I can't ignore the fact that it's not going to happen. Killed me.
Yeah, sad.
I'm looking at that going, how can you you've given up?
Yeah,
I understand why you're feeling this and that, and I get it, and I'm sorry, I truly am sorry. The more I'm learning about it, the more and more sorry I am. But to reach a point that says you can't ignore the fact it's not going to happen. Here's the thing, it's not a fact. And I just want to tell the person, it's not a fact. It's not a fact unless we quit trying.
Well, and that's what I say. People will say things that they either mean or they don't mean. But and I think that's the problem with something like Facebook or people posting. Even if they post their true feeling, even if you post what you really feel, it's still out of context.
Yes, it's absolutely out of context.
Because it doesn't.
Well, this was in relation to the shooting,
no,
right?
No,
and that's exactly your point.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
I know it's in the context of the shooting,
but it's still.
But the reality, because of the technology that we have, this is how we communicate.
So,
whereas if this person was sitting across from you, you'd have a conversation, which might change how you react to how that person feels. And allowing you to have a conversation might even change how that person feels. But if let's say you read that post and then you responded to that post, right? Even in your response to that post, it's still out of context.
And to your exact point, Facebook is horrendous for having conversations. It's not meant to be conversations.
Well, even email.
They're meant to be right. We don't have until this thing called Udicci that creates shameless plug there. We have a thing called engaging. That's not how this works. Right. I mean, ours was designed for conversations, and we're just waiting for. Anyways. You're 100% right. You're 100% right on this. What this did for me this morning, though, was I'll share this the whole life experience thing, and that's what we were talking about last week. Is that your experience has been very different than mine, and vice versa. And I appreciate that. But I started thinking about this morning. Is maybe this person, if she and I were having our conversation, she'd probably go, "What do you know? You grew up in Canada."
Well, she might not say
that. This is a conversation going on in my head. Right.
She might have grown up in Canada.
Right, exactly. Like, you don't know. You
don't. And that's what we lose by losing the human contact.
100%. So, where I'm thinking through this, I'm like, all right, how much can I actually talk to this woman? Like, are you going to accept... one of the things that's hitting me lately, and it happens with Tim and I, it's like, everybody always... I'm going to do a massively poor job of... I'm going to overgeneralize. It seems so often everybody wants their problems to be worse than everybody else's. And they never want somebody else's problems to... They don't want to relate to somebody else because seemingly, by relating to somebody, you've now minimized your horrendous experience in life. And again, that's a much, much deeper conversation, but it's almost like everybody wants to do a one-upmanship of how bad things are in my life. And again, I want to take this away from that conversation. But, you'll see it once where I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to take my dog to the vet. Oh, I had to take both dogs, the cat to the vet, and somebody kicked and ran over my cat. Yeah, but I'll do one better for you. And it seems to be a part of our norm in society now.
But it's not, I don't think that it's just now. I mean, it's one of the lessons that we have to teach our children. Because, I've gone through it with my daughter, and I'm quite sure my mother went through it with me, and I just don't remember, but it got in there somehow, is that you'll listen, you may have a conversation with your child, and your child is saying, you know, you and dad hate me, and blah, 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 and my life was so miserable, you never do this, you never. And then what I learned, finally one day, I just got kind of tired of it, and I said to my daughter, you know what? Everybody has a hard luck story about their childhood.
That's it.
There isn't a single person who did not have some difficulty in their childhood. So if you recognize that, then the next thing you do is pick yourself up and move forward. So,
that's it.
With that said,
that's it.
What I see in what this person is saying is that there are people who truly do believe, who have walked in similar shoes, that there are just some things that are just intrinsic and they're not going to change. And many of them become expats. And they leave the country. And they move somewhere where they get the freedom that they've been looking for.
And for me, it's interesting. I'll share a shortened version of a long story or a conversation I had with somebody. And it is this whole idea of life experience. And I was talking to a friend, and you know, there was this person that had grown up in a Christian family going out, missionaries, doing all of this stuff in life, and then you're sitting here going like, all right, so this is what this person saw growing up, and then all of a sudden they're now this missionary, and you know, to talk to that person, they're convinced that they're supposed to be missionaries, but to be like a business person that understands, well, you've got to travel, and what do you have to do, and how do you have to communicate, and how do you do all these other things.
And respecting other cultures.
And now you're hitting. Okay,
that's change that culture.
Right.
You do your mission work.
Right. And hey, if you so all good stuff. Right.
Are you a Trekkie?
No.
Are you a Trekkie, Tim?
No.
How could you guys? I got something for you, mister. I got something for you. And I got something for you. You're not even ready for it. But you're a Trekkie. Are you
I like the new Star Trek.
Okay, but what's the prime directive? For all the Star Trek, what's the prime directive? What is it that no Starship Enterprise member should ever do when they go on a planet? Is interfere with the culture of that.
Oh yeah, that was the start of this last movie, yeah.
But that's what I mean.
And he got mad. Actually,
the prime directive.
So not to interfere with culture. So what was interesting now, though, where I was going with this, is that this person is convinced, if you will, they should be a missionary. And from the outside looking in, and this is a very like random, shallow opinion of that we were having, we're like, yeah, maybe not so much. Maybe that's really not what you should be doing. But in their head, they grew up with it. That's what they saw their entire life, and they're like, well, that's what we do. So that's a great example for me when I was like looking at that going, see how often we take that, what we see growing up as to say that's what we should do. And now I bring that back to the city, and I'm sitting here looking at these young kids who are, and we've talked about this, they're growing up, and this is how I actually got to this point with somebody else. I said, so now that we have these young children who are born in the poverty in the inner cities, 9 times, whatever the number is, let me not go too high, 8 times out of 10, no father. Yeah, I don't want, single parents, early, like poverty, and what they see all around them are people selling drugs and committing crime to care for their family, and then they go to jail. So what am I supposed to do in life? Well, I guess I'm supposed to get up and go to, right? And what do we? And you don't have to worry about graduating
because somebody cares if you go to school.
Because nobody cares, right? I mean, if you will, from their perspective, that is the lot that they were born into. That is the life that they were born into. So they're just going to live the life
that's the crab barrel that they're trapped.
That's the crab, right? And for us who live in the suburbs, I don't care where you live, to not recognize that reality. Why do so many Ivy League kids, well, like the parents who go to Ivy League colleges have kids who go to Ivy League colleges? Well, because we follow our parents' footsteps.
Actually, part of it is because they're aware of the Good Old Boys Network. And
well, there's a lot of reasons. Sure, but they
get them into those.
And let me go this way, though.
But in the meantime,
hold on.
those same Ivy League kids are shooting heroin and mothers is in the bedroom and
that's
killing
right.
their parents and
Right.
they can't get out of their barrel.
And they can't, right, and that's my thing, it's like, I don't have a problem that the good old boys club, you know, it's like, for all those people who want to sit there and go, why do you label, you know, Joe down in the city a gangster? Well, why do you label good old boys club? It's just who you hang around with, it's who you know, it's you do what you do, and it's networking, it's called society. And if we were
Unless
just...
it's affirmative action, then it's bad. Which is no different than the good old boys network. It isn't. It isn't.
I loved talking with Doris. She has, I'm half tempted to put you guys out here together. Because she had...
We've been together once.
She has great, I mean, you gotta admit, her journey to where she is gives her a wonderful perspective. She really does. Stay tuned, you'll be
Okay, we went on
so,
a tangent.
no, but no, we really, ultimately speaking, I think that that's exactly what I want people to do is open up your eyes and go, hey, you know your kids. If my mom is watching, hey, why did most of your kids go in the military? Oh, because our family goes in the military. Why do most of these kids in the city end up in jail or not finishing high school? Because most of the kids don't, it's the same thing. And if we don't think it's the same thing, it's not. I don't want to say it's not their fault, but it's the same reason why all the ones who go into the Marines become alcoholics, right? No. Wrong, right? Call it what it is. It just is what it is. We get it. We get it. You gotta be drunk to fight like that. We're good. Right? I'm just going to throw everybody equally under the bus here because it is reality. We follow what it is we know. And when the rest of us want to sit there and go, oh, look at them, what you should be saying is, oh, look at what I've caused. Look at what I've caused by thinking it's a them thing and not an us thing.
Yeah, because it's easy to disassociate yourself.
It's so easy to disassociate yourself from something that's not painful, which is why I asked in the very beginning, are you willing to change your mind if it benefits you? Yeah! Are you willing to change your mind if it benefits somebody else? Nope!
Well,
I'm not going to do that.
But not only that, I think that, you know, this idea that, okay, we might have this sort of divisive culture and we've got the kids in the city and they're doing all these things. What the people who are not going through that don't understand is that whether you understand it or not, this is affecting your quality of life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This affects you.
Hey, go ahead and be like selfish. Help because it's good for you.
No society benefits if part of the society is, this is happening in one part of the society, and there's, I mean, in many of the problems that you have in the inner cities, you have in rural areas.
Absolutely.
You have them in rural
So,
areas that are not
a little bit different.
That are not communities of color.
Right.
They're just rural areas.
Yeah.
So then it becomes an issue of class. It's not an issue of race. It's an issue of class.
Yep.
And so, does your society suffer? Yes, it suffers.
Absolutely does.
You can't poison one part of your society and think that that poison's not them. It's like cancer. Okay,
that's right.
I know I have this cancerous thumb, but I think I'll just leave that thumb over there because I'm going to be okay. No, it's going to spread through your entire body.
Poverty is I say this. Poverty is not a financial condition.
Right.
It's a mind. It's a problem of our mind and our heart.
Well, it's a social problem.
Truly, I'm going to say, it's a social problem. And how do you fix a social problem? Start changing hearts and minds. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's a problem of hearts and minds. And it's not going to change when we sit back and say, oh, I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to go out and say how wrong this person is and how right this person is because I'm so convinced of it and on there. So with that, and we've got to stop the division. One of the things I want to talk about then is how can we influence change? What are some actual positive steps we can begin doing in Rochester, New York to influence change? And you started the idea with, let's find things to agree on. Mm-hmm. How do we start?
They can't be big things. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I've been in conversations with people. Well, I'll give you an example. I was in conversation with a group of people, and we're a small group, and this person says, "Well, I think we should put our efforts behind changing campaign financing." Okay.
Yay.
But that's a really big topic.
Yeah.
That's a really big thing.
Yeah.
That's really big. And so when we talk about how do we find that commonality and how do we make change, we can't let the conversation drift in too broad an area, because the reality is change comes through grassroots.
And I'm going to 100% agree with you. I'm not opposed to taking on those big things, but those big things get accomplished by a group down here that you helped get their neighborhood clean, and then this group down here that you helped get a coffee shop started, and then this neighborhood over here that you planted a garden, and notice, you helped plant the garden, you helped over here, you helped over here, and you want to take on campaign finance? Now they're going to be willing to listen to you and help, but not until you go and get involved. You've got to get down there and get involved at the grassroots level to think that you're ever going to get any kind of real, hearsay. And this is your point. Here, wrong word, hearsay. Just ignore that. Edit that out. Thanks. We're good. And keep rolling. Take 2.
Where's Ted?
He's sleeping.
He's sleeping over there.
Power napping.
Now I completely forgot. But that is that greater point. We can't take on everything, the big, huge thing by ourselves. And here's what I want to say. If you're out there on Facebook and you're one of these people always complaining, back to our Burger King thing last week, if you're always complaining and you don't find yourself out on the street picking up trash, or you're standing by somebody who's trying to protest, violence, or joining a prayer walk in your city, or doing something,
I unfriend you.
I unfriend you. That's it. I unfriend you. I unfriend you all. Because it's like, honestly, you're just whining. You're just whining. Right? You're the little kid who you eventually have to say, get over it. Everybody has an issue. And until you get out, get on the street and do something, you're a whiner.
You got that off your chest.
No, not quite. And I guess my question up here, for those of you who can't see it, my question was, how do you motivate people who how do you motivate people to change? You call them whiners. That's what you do. You go out, you hit them hard. You call them out. You call them out. You're like, you are just really weak. Whips. Get it out there. That's the best way to move. No, not at all.
I don't know that I know the answer to it all, but I do feel, I still feel strongly that that as an individual, when you're trying to figure out what is it that I can do, I think you still do it individual by individual by individual, yes. Because it does grow exponentially. So if I can make a difference in one person's life, I know I can do that. That's not pie in the sky.
Right.
That's not, well, how am I going to do it? But if there's just one person, if I start with one person, if I make a change in that person's, I'll use an example. My mother worshipped her, loved her to death, but she wasn't affectionate. Right? She didn't like that. But I'm a person who likes that. So I said, if I have a child, I'm going to be very affectionate with my child. So my daughter's very affectionate. My grandchildren are very affectionate. So I changed 3 lives, essentially.
There you go. Yep.
And that will grow. That will grow. So what I'm saying is, and that's what I was really talking about when I gave the example of the campaign financing, is that, and I've been in took classes and that sort of thing, where you just sit around and you talk academically, right? About how to solve these problems. And really, you can talk about them from now until the end of time, and nothing will come out of that. It just becomes an intellectual discussion.
And then we can all be happy that we had that conversation
Right.
and head out to the bar.
It's an entertaining exercise. I enjoy it. But if I want to change something,
That's right.
I came to realize I can only do it one person at a time. And that over time, the one-on-one contact that I may have may only be with 10 people. But the reality is, it's much more than that.
So let's bring this back for a minute. If you are a person out there, and you're one of those people that I'm talking to that you're whining, and you're sitting here saying, you know what? Fine. I admit it. I'm a whiner. And I actually want to stop whining, and I want to start making a difference. What I hear you saying right now is like a person might be able to sit back right now and say, you know what? I want to see, I'm going to identify 2 or 3 or 5, maybe 10, whatever that number is, people in my life who I know I can help in some way.
Right.
Who I believe I can help in some way.
Right.
I care enough because like that person over there, they're hurting. That person over there, they just want like somebody to
They
listen and
need
read.
something that I can give.
Right.
If it's a person that I can't help, and I think is not worth my time, I'm not going to spend my time with that person. But if I can help one person, just one,
and it's not hard. It's, you know, somebody who wants to be a writer, offer read. Maybe it's hot flashes. Maybe it's not menopause.
It's not hot flashes.
So yeah, that's now one other question, and I worded the question wrong here, which is I said is how
my glasses are starting to fog.
I know,
It's so hot
I know.
here.
Hey, getting hot here. Okay, I'm just sticking it out right here. It is hot. It is hot. It's all because of Tess. She brings it. She's like, shit, that hurts. It's actually what happened with Julio long time. All right, the question I asked on, which is, and I don't like it, but how can we convince, that's the word I don't like, but I wrote it that way anyways. How can we convince a lady like the one online that there is reason for hope? How can we actually help people who have seemingly given up? How can we show them, you know what? I hear you. You are hurt. You're hurt to the point that you've shut down. How can we help them hope?
Again, I think that example, there are people who feel that way, but you can't help someone who is online, out of context, and you can't have human dialogue with. And I mean,
all right, well, let's say, okay, let's just for example, people listening.
So you might encounter someone like that.
Yeah, and how do we give a person like that hope? How do we work with that? How do we help bring hope to people who are seemingly hopeless? That all hope is lost. Because let's face it, you look around the world right now, there's a lot of reason to go, all right, this is not good. It's going bad quick.
Well,
we're talking World War III quick.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's World War. It's the precursor to World War III. And if you study history and you read history, it's these same events that led up to different wars and things like the Crimean War and in fighting over that same territory that were precursors to World War I and World War II. And so history repeats itself. So we're actually not going through something that's unique.
True.
We are not going through something that's unique. The times really aren't all that different because these precursors have existed before. And there have been people who, like yourself, who see that rainbow at the end, and at one point, did McCarthy say, "Oh, you're a communist"?
Yeah, probably. That's me. I'm the communist capitalist. That's like which would make sense. I'm just the bipolar guy.
But seriously, so and I think, and that is why, and maybe this is my tangent, my soapbox. But that's why I really think that if you want people to have hope, if you truly want them to have hope, then education is the key.
Yeah.
Because it's education that opens your mind to the possibilities.
Yeah.
It's the way that you see the world and make it different. She might, in the end, and I know
Yeah,
nothing,
okay.
again, here we
Yeah,
are
good
again,
stuff.
with out of context.
Yeah, no, I got you. You know, I think you're spot
I can
on.
only speak from my experience and my upbringing. And I grew up in the upper city, in the inner city. But I grew up with someone who said, we read, we study history. We study, we study, we study, we read, we read. And by doing that, I saw the world as a place of infinite possibilities. And that I wasn't locked into one place all my life. That I could go where I wanted to go. I could be what I wanted to be. Because my mind had been expanded. It doesn't mean that I don't necessarily have the same feelings that she may have.
That's right.
In certain,
But you don't want those control you.
certain social areas.
Right.
So in the end, I might be one of the people that says, this is never going to change. I'm going to Costa Rica or Panama. And I do what I'm doing.
If you go, I'm right behind you. No more calls. If you leave, I'm done.
But that's,
I'm done.
but see, to me, that's not giving, to me, as a gypsy, that's
Yeah.
not giving up.
Right.
That's being a citizen of the world and not being locked in the crab barrel.
That's fair.
Because I'm making that choice. But I think, regardless of whether it's ethnicity or whatever it is, education is the key.
I think I really do like education. One of the things that I think of, and to your point, I hear you very loud and clear when you're saying like the technology has removed that personal interaction. But I also recognize that I'm not going to get rid of technology because it's here to stay. So now it's a matter of how do we form the technology to maybe give us the personal insight, the personal compassion and care, though we may not be able to have the legitimate personal interaction, if you will. So I do hear you there. I absolutely, education is the answer. I would almost, I'll say, I would almost present it that we should teach people to seek understanding, which is kind of the same thing as education. But I think understanding.
But see, my feeling is, and I don't even necessarily mean formal education, but I think through education you gain understanding.
100%. One of the things that
getting to that understanding, you need the education, and I mean on both sides.
Yeah, and one of the things for me, because I see the way we're presenting education today in America, I don't think we are telling people seek understanding. And to me, that's where I'm like, seek understanding by getting educated. You know, that the goal of your education is understanding, and that would be that piece of it.
That, to me, that's the thing we should, that microphone, that commonality should be the gain of knowledge.
And how do we, I didn't understand that about the metal.
But if you can, and I mean, the whole society, if we focus, I think that if we focused on the education, and I mean quality education, not this.
100%, 100%. That
is a way of changing people's minds because it broadens your horizons. And by broadening your horizons, then you're more accepting of differences. You're more accepting of making changes and understanding. But as long as we're discounting education, as long as it's not a priority, I mean truly a priority of society, then we're all going to suffer for it because we're not, our minds are too small. And it's just...
No, you're 100% right.
I mean, that's just...
So we're being told to wrap it up here. We're being told by Mike Nichols that says, "What up, guys? Background talking is distracting." Oh, well, deal with it. Deal with it. Deal with it. It's like this every night. You've been here before. You get it. Hey, Mike, how's it going? Glad to see you tuned in tonight. So a couple of quick things before we tune out. Renewal. We're going to have another one of our little community networking events, and it should be much bigger this time. So we got some cool things happening. September 25th.
4 or 7.
I don't know. We haven't figured that part out. I've actually sent out some invitations to some one cool woman that I'd like to get involved. She actually has a book out on Amazon right now that's called Navigating Entrepreneurship. I think it'll be very interesting. And we've got a few other things that are going to go on that day. But basically, just so you kind of get an idea where my heart is, my thinking is for that day, and what I want that to act as, I took a quote from Henry Beecher Ward, I believe is his name. It says,
You just made that up.
No, that would be Tag making it up. It says that nature glories in death even more than life. Hey, he's whining, so he's listening. Nature glories in death even more than life. It says every green thing likes to die gloriously. And what for me is interesting is we're coming into autumn. And I think it's very interesting in many cultures that autumn is actually considered the new year. And for me, one of the things I've really been intrigued with over the past year is how autumn, when all the leaves are shed, it's actually shedding the energy of growth from that growing season. All the energy it got from the sun, all the energy that it got from the roots. And here this whole thing, these big trees, they grew and they dropped seeds. And all of a sudden then they dropped leaves to cover those seeds, which provided nourishment. And it provided for the next generation. Nature teaches us.
He's so sweet.
What? I love it. I think it's cool. So nature provides us for the next generation, and being that we're coming into autumn, that's why I'm calling this thing renewal. So I really want this to be like seeds that have been cared for a while, coming out and getting ready to make something great for next year. So that's what renewal is going to be, and I really want it to be about this idea of, okay, some self-examination, which we'll be doing in the last few weeks, some willingness to change our minds, because we're going to go from seeds to trees, right? Now, it's not going to happen overnight, and for myself, I'll give a shout-out to my, or a little bit of shout-out, the high school I went to. I always loved it. It said, like the acorn must, from the, I'm sorry. Yeah, like the egg, like the acorn must.
Isn't it acorn?
Acorn, whatever. Eggplant, eggplant, whatever. Like the acorn must from the oak tree start, so we are endeavor to become what thou art. And with that, we're going to end Udicci.TV tonight. Wham!
He wasn't
Squirrel,
paying attention.
whining. I did. I remember that from like the great oak, the eggplant must start. I don't know. We're good with that. Let's get out of here. We're good. Thank you for tonight, and be back here in just a minute. Welcome, Carmen Rivera. We're going to be just ending this show, wrapping it back up in 360 Real Talk. Julio, Tag, just do this while I'm talking, so it'll just end as it goes. They'll be up here shortly, and yeah, be back shortly.
Hi, Carmen.